well, what's in these boxes is going to be an absolute game changer for my capabilities here in the shop, what I can and can't make. It's something I'm always trying to improve on. I like to be self-sufficient, not have to rely on outside help, and just being able to make your own stuff at any scale opens up so many doors as far as what you can do, what you can build, how you can build it. If you have to wait on somebody else to design and make something, and there to be enough of a market, it really limits what you can do. And this is a step I wanted to take for a very, very long time. Now, this is kind of the tip of the iceberg for this set of projects. We've got a lot to do, including setting these up, but it's kind of a snowball effect because the shop is kind of like a race car where you're always trying to find improvements. There's always changes to be made. Now, don't get me wrong at all, because I am so happy with how far the shop's come and where it is now. 5 years ago, I could have never dreamed of having a shop set up like this and all the tools and capability we do have currently, but every bit of capability we add means more stuff we can do. You know, we have a tubing bender, a TIG welder, press brake, belt grinder, all these things for fabrication, and every fabrication tool I've added has allowed me to do so much more and make stuff I never thought I could make, which has allowed me to not only do better builds and do things differently, you know, not kind of be boxed into the way of doing things by what's just available, but also it's just way more fun, man. Building stuff, making stuff, it's just enjoyable. And this is that next chapter of being able to open so many doors as far as what I can make, how I can make it. So that being said, the kind of area that designated for these is over here. And as you can see, it's a little bit preoccupied at the moment. It's become a bit of a catch-all. It's kind of a rule of thumb with any sort of workshop, workspace is if you have space, you open up some space, you're gonna fill it up. And that's where we're at with this. So we got a lot of stuff to shuffle, move. We basically got to build out this whole area into what it's supposed to be, what it was kind of intended to be when we built the lofts. There's stuff over there that's gonna have to move to make room for the new machines, but also just stuff in general spread out across the shop like material that doesn't have a home. And it not only needs a home, a place, but it needs a home where it's organized and accessible, because what ends up happening when stuff doesn't have a home or isn't organized is you end up getting more of the same thing that you already didn't have space for in the first place because you didn't know you had it, you know? So we're gonna have to kind of rearrange at least about half the shop, bare minimum, to make this work. But I've got a plan for setting these up that I'm really excited about. If it works out, it's gonna be sweet. That being said though, looking at dimensions and doing some measuring, that in reality don't often mix. A lot of times you measure something, you think it's gonna work, it's not gonna work, you know? So really you gotta put your hands on it, you gotta put it together and then find out if it works or not, which means step one is gonna be to get these out of the boxes, see what we're working with, get them assembled, and then see if our plan's gonna work. Can't say I'm mad about that, because this is something I've waited years and years and years to get. And I'm glad I don't have to wait any longer to take these things out of the boxes, because that's step one. So I do gotta quit jibber jabbering though, so we can get to it. Let's see what we got, man. Whew. Before we get too deep into today's video, I wanted to talk to you about today's video sponsor, Huel, or more specifically, their ready-to-drink, nutritionally complete Black Edition here. This has been my go-to. It's become a staple in my routine because I get those midday hunger cravings, but if I have to stop and go get something to eat or make something or whatever, and I eat it and it generally makes me kind of tired, it takes me a bit to really just get back up to speed with the productivity, and I'm literally chopping 2 hours of productivity when it's all said and done out of the middle of my day. Problem is, if I don't eat to avoid that, then I run out of steam towards the end of the day and I lose productivity there. This is my perfect solution because I can grab it and go. I don't have to mix it. I don't have to do anything like that. And I can literally drink it while I'm still working and I get everything. 35 grams of protein, omega-3, omega-6, vitamins, minerals, nutrients. And not only do I not get tired, I don't get that food coma, but I get a little bit of an energy boost from the vitamin B12. So it has just been the perfect way to get me through that midday hunger and give me the fuel to carry me through the end of the day so I can stay productive while I work late, but also without having to lose so much productivity in the middle. So if you're interested in trying it out for yourself, either use the QR code on the screen or click the link down in the description and use my code TaylorRay with 2 R's to get 15% off plus a free gift for new customers. So great way to try it out firsthand for yourself. That being said, speaking of productivity, we're going to need a lot of productivity if we want to get all of this stuff done. There's a lot of it. So I'm going to finish this and we're going to get back to work. Big moment. start with one at a time. It's 2 machines here. Start with this one. See, this is one of those things. I thought this box was going to be super large, but it's actually a lot smaller, which means my plan might really work. Man, well, already off the bat, I gotta give them an A+ on the packaging. So what we have here is a pair of micro CNC machines. We have a micro mill setup and a micro lathe. Now, I've wanted a mill and a lathe for a long time, and for the longest time, I thought that would mean getting an older, massive, super heavy duty machine. I mean, I'm talking like 40, 80, 100-year-old machine. The problem is those things are heavy. They're massive and they're heavy. I mean, I don't even know if R2 would be up to the task of moving one of those things around. And they're power hungry. They draw a lot of power. And most of them that are affordable are 3-phase, which we don't even have 3-phase to the house, and we're getting power out here off the house. So, and they're massive. They take up a lot of space, and that was always kind of my hang up. So I'd look at the smaller machines, but a lot of times the smaller machines are really cheaply made. They're meant to be cheap. I don't like buying stuff like that I know I'm just gonna end up having to throw the whole thing away when it breaks. So I just got stuck in that loop, you know? Go to the large, there's problems there, small, problems there, until I came across this company. I actually found an old forum post talking about them, and the company is called Taig Tools, and they make these micro, smaller desktop machines, but they build them the way a large machine is built. I mean, these are ball screw units. There is virtually no backlash at all here. It's super fine, super precise. They're heavy duty built on these thick frames. They're made in America. They're built to last, but they're a much smaller form factor, much less power hungry. And I decided if we're gonna do it, we might as well do it, and decided to go full CNC with it. So both of these are fully CNC, closed loop systems, so we can make just about anything we want, which, man, it's gonna be a learning curve. It's gonna take some time, get them set up, get them dialed in, learn using them, but all that, but it is going to expand our capabilities by so much. So let's get to it. Let's start putting these things together, see what they look like all said and done. Something I've become incredibly adverse to is having to put things together after you buy them. There's nothing worse than something showing up to your door and it's in a million pieces. But fortunately, these came pretty much fully assembled. I mean, really, with the exception of a few things that you wouldn't want to have on there during shipping, they're pretty much ready to go. So it shouldn't take us too long to put these together. Just had to put the X-axis on for the mill, and then we've got to put the motor on, the belt drive. We'll need to install the stepper motors and all of that stuff. But, you know, all little pretty simple stuff. And these being CNC, there's a few more parts. You know, I debated between doing the CNC version or the manual version, and the manual version is cheaper. And obviously, it would be nice to have the option to manually, you know, cut or grind on something if we needed to just, you know, modify something a little bit. But I think for most of what we're going to be doing, having that CNC capability is going to be the biggest help for what kind of stuff I plan to make with these. Now, the thing is, when it comes to buying new tools, it's something I've learned over time, especially something as major as this, a mill, a lathe, a welder. You don't necessarily know what you're going to use it for until you have it. You kind of almost reprogram your brain a little bit once you have something and you start using it, because it all of a sudden becomes an option. So, you know, if you can think of 10 things you're going to use something for before you get it, it will probably turn to 100. I did this with the welder. You know, I could only think of a handful of things I needed to weld when I wanted to learn how to weld and got my first welder, and now I'm welding stuff nearly every day. Same with the ArcDroid CNC plasma table. I thought of a few oddball projects I was going to use it for, and now now I'm using it all the time. And same with the 3D printer. The list goes on and on, but basically as you use something and implement it into your routine, you look at projects differently. Instead of thinking, how can I fabricate this piece to make this bracket, I can think, oh, how can I design this and CNC cut it? And that's why I went with the CNC version, because it's going to allow us to make things a lot more precise, more repeatable, and man, I am so excited to finally have these tools. This is something, again, I've been wanting for years and years, and finally feel like I found the perfect option for what I need. And man, it's a snazzy looking unit all put together. All right, well, this one's pretty well wrapped up as far as assembly goes. Got all our stepper motors on, our motor, our belt tensioned, VFD, speed controller, all of that is good to go. So that's one done. We need to get it out of the way so we can do the lathe next. But basically these motors will hook up to this box along with the encoder. So that's the closed loop system. Basically open loop, it would just be feeding this motor and telling it to move. But if the motor got hung up and skipped or something, it wouldn't know that. Whereas with the encoder, it knows exactly where the motor is if there's an issue, etc. So that's the really neat thing about this system, is that it's closed loop. So anyway, yeah, man, I'm pretty stoked. This is a nice unit. I'm thinking that the combo is gonna fit where I want to put them, but one thing at a time. Let's get the lathe put together. Oh, I'm so excited. I mean, it's gonna be a learning curve. I had to order a CD drive adapter so we can put the software on the computer, but we're gonna have a mill and a lathe. Let's get back to work. Putting together the lathe is pretty simple process. I mean, pretty much the same as the mill, just a little bit less moving parts. The mill, we have one extra axis. The lathe is spinning what you're cutting, the material, whereas the mill is cutting the material, it's spinning the tool. But overall, pretty simple, pretty much the same process, 2 separate motors instead of 3. I would be curious what your guesses are. I've always thought that I would use a mill way more than a lathe. I've always felt that the mill would add more to my capabilities than the lathe would, but now I'm not so sure. I'm gonna put my guess on the mill, but I'm curious what your guesses are, which you think we'll use more. All right, well, lathe setup roughly assembled. Got our steppers on, got it all set up, motor on. So yeah, I'm really thinking, based on our measurements, that we should be able to fit both of these where I want to fit them. And where I want to fit them is on this toolbox setup. Now, I don't want to keep it here. I want to move it back to that area, but mount both of them to the table with the control boxes and everything. So that way it's all in one place, and then we can keep our tooling, our raw material, all that stuff organized in here. We can definitely fit them both if we drop the pegboard down, but with the pegboard up, I still think we can fit them both, and then we can use that to organize extra parts, things like that. So that's the plan. Now that means, though, obviously, we're gonna have to build something else for here. Now this is something I kind of wanted to do anyway. Regardless, one of the first projects I want to do with the mill is making a pair of seat brackets. I've got some new seats, but I've also got these suspension seat bases. So it basically rides like on an air shock. So when you hit bumps, when you hit wake, but the combo doesn't work. You got to make seat mounts. So I want to make basically a seat adapter plate for now to get them in there and get them all set up. And then that way I'm ready to go to design a billet version. So at baseline, I like to be organized. I'm not a fan of clutter, but there's always one area that kind of becomes the designated clutter area where you put stuff that doesn't have a place, and that toolbox is that. So we've got a lot of new stuff to find a home for. Now, I wanted to go ahead and get these seat bases and seats installed, so that way we have kind of our rough dimensions to design our bracket around to test out the mill. As I said, you don't necessarily know what you're going to use something for until you have it. This is one of the projects that sprung to mind when I finally committed to getting these. It's something I wanted to make for a while, so thought it'd be a good starter, start project. But to do that, to know what we need to do and how we need to make this bracket, we've got to get these roughly installed with the current thin steel brackets. So basically, I've got to make an adapter plate out of this aluminum, basically drilling and tapping the pattern for the seat seat base and then the pattern for the seats themselves so that they can work together and coexist. A lot of drilling, a lot of tapping. I want to do lightning holes and stuff for this, but we may redesign this bracket altogether when we get the mill up and running, because we could make it a lot nicer and pocketed and more rigid and, you know, really use the features of the mill. But for now, we need to get them in there, see where we like the seats, make sure everything fits, so that way we don't design a fancy bracket and then it puts the seat in a spot where it doesn't work or we don't like it. Not to mention, I also have a plan for the old seats out of the boat, and if it works out, it's going to be really cool. Shop upgrade. The brackets could definitely use some lightning. It actually looks pretty cool. Alright, set the shock pressure. More room back here now, or plenty of room back here. Alright, well, a little later than I would have liked, but I'm gonna go test these things out. Take a quick rip. Definitely clean things up a lot to have the seat bases, and then there where the seat cutouts are for the floor. Interesting night for me. My boat broke. It's, oh, you can't see it behind that truck. Paddled back to the boat ramp, and there's a queue because somebody fell off the dock or something. All right, well, the boat test went well for a bit, but had an interesting ending. There was a very bad noise. I was putting it, shut it off, fired it back up. Real bad noise. Shut down and locked up, and the prop exploded. But I did end up changing the seat mounting, and I'm really happy with where it's at now. So that means I've got my A to B base to design a bracket so that we can test out the mill by cutting it. Now, obviously, we got to set the mill up, but the reason I wanted to get that done first, I have a spot in the shop for these seats. It may work out, it may not. But if it does work out, then that's one less thing in this area that we've got to find a new home for. Best way to get parts out of your way is to install them. It's my motto. Trying to embrace that motto. It's a win-win. You get it out of your way and it's installed, you know? So anyway, let's see if these seats are gonna work where I'm thinking. Just had this thing out yesterday because I was putting stuff up on the boat there. I got a plan to. I got a little button controller thing. I gotta try to wire it in here. I think we'll try to do that, so I can at least go up and down with this thing with a remote, so I could just ride it up there. That would be nice. All right. Well, Plan A is not gonna work. Plan A was to put them both here, but then that closes off my walkway. So that's the only reason that speaker's even up here is this side. Well, I guess I could put the trash can right here. It's not bad. If you're hanging out watching someone play The Sims, it'd be a good spot. So right now we've only got the 2 chairs. And there's definitely been a few times when I'm hanging out with multiple people and someone's got a stand, which kind of just makes it weird for everybody. I mean, that works. I'm gonna put a couple wood screws into the floor so they're like mounted, because that way someone can't lean back and tip off the edge of the platform. They act kind of as a guardrail, but hey, I mean, they even match. They're red. It's pretty neat. Yeah, it's a good spot for them. It's cool. Adds some character up here. Completes the hangout spot. So sweet, one less thing on the underneath. They're right underneath us. So still need to get the rest of the stuff, but I think it's time we set up the workbench. So that way we know how much space we need and confirm what we're doing with this area, because that's a whole project in and of itself, but one task at a time. Let's get to it. Oh, we gotta obviously find a place for all this stuff. Like I said, this area has become a bit of a catch-all for, the land of the lost, the things that you just don't necessarily have a spot for. And you do need one of those. At least for me, to stay organized elsewhere, I need a spot where I can be unorganized and I can just toss things and get them out of the way. Because eventually, no matter how many spots you make for certain things, this goes here and bolts go there and this goes, you can't have a spot for everything. You need kind of a spot for everything, for everything but everything. So we do have that with these Milwaukee packouts in this cabinet, but they're starting to fill up, and I know that the more I pack in there, the more I'm gonna have to go through it one day and actually organize it. So it's a fine line, but we got everything cleaned off. We got a nice clean workbench. It is always nice whenever I do declutter that bench, whether we're putting mills and lathes on it or not, just because it is the one area of the shop that's pretty cluttered. So now it's a matter of seeing how we can fit these on here. Now we have to keep in mind that they've got to articulate and they've got to move and go left and right and back and forth. So finding a spot where they're both going to work and not interfere with each other and not be hanging out way in the way, a little tricky, but it looks like it's going to work. The measuring did work with reality for once. Well, it's getting real now. It's a little tough because I don't see many scenarios where we'd be running both at the same time, but I don't want to plan around not doing that. And then there's a scenario where it would be ideal to. So obviously trying to make room. One of the things we're going to need to do, though, is the control boxes need to make something to mount them elevated. So that way, one, they're not getting slung with, chips and everything. I thought about putting them in this cabinet here, but yeah, it's happening. Oh man, it's crazy. This is something I've waited for so long. So anyway, I think step next. The next step's going to be making. We need to make mounts for the control boxes. Time to break out another recent addition, our first CNC machine, our CNC ArcDroid plasma cutter. This is a perfect example of something that I thought I would use here and there kind of sparingly, but when I needed it, it was, it's something that you couldn't really get by without, or there's times where you need it and there's no substitute, right? But I have used this thing way more than I ever thought I would, and this is a great example of that because we're going to use this to design and cut our brackets to hang these control boxes up. Now we could just do this simply and, cut up a piece, do some measuring, or we could design it on Fusion and cut it out with the plasma cutter. Perfect, repeatable, have two identical brackets. Bada bing, bada boom, Bob's your uncle. So I just started designing up a pretty basic setup. I like using these octagons just because I can't cut an octagon otherwise. So if I'm going to cut it on the plasma cutter and I'm going to use some sort of hole, just as a lightweight addition, I like to use an octagon. It's a feature I can't normally use, but I did overdo it on the size though. I didn't think about the size on the table, and it was not going to fit how I designed it originally. So I tried to redesign it quickly using the ArcDroid. One of the cool features about that little tablet that comes with it is you can do that, but even still it was tight. So I had to do a little more redesign work, and we're going to have to take a swing at these settings for aluminum. I haven't cut aluminum on this, so I'm not exactly sure what the ideal settings are, but hopefully we can get them right out of the box and have a good cut. All right, I think we're ready. Man, it's always like the most nerve-wracking. I haven't cut aluminum with this yet, so turn the amperage down some. Probably speed it up a tiny bit, though. All right. Now we gotta try to figure out. Just barely. The main reason I even decided to use aluminum for this project was because I have a bunch of this relatively thin, 16 gauge aluminum lying around, and I thought it would be plenty to make these two brackets, but after cutting the first one, I realized it was going to be tight, and not necessarily on purpose. We had just enough space it looked like to cut them both, but we've got to get this just right. Basically, where we put the material and where we have the cut laid out on the Art Droid that have to be lined up perfectly for this to work. It's always kind of nerve-wracking because you cut the inside to the outside, so that way, you know, the piece doesn't fall out while it's trying to cut all the inside shapes. So you don't really know till the end, but luckily we judged it perfectly. I mean, we had about a 1/16 of an inch left over. So we've got our 2 plates in 2 dimensions. Trying to get the slag off the aluminum doesn't work as well as with the steel. The steel, you can kind of chip it off. It's honestly easier to chip it off than to grind it off. But on the aluminum, we got to grind it off. And with all these cuts and shapes, that's a lot of intricate grinding work. This is definitely a scenario where, out of habit, I'm probably using the wrong tool. The belt grinder would have been better for the general cleanup work, but for getting in the intricate shapes and getting all that slag off, probably should have just used the die grinder with a Scotch-Brite on it or something. But, you know, I love the belt grinder. It's probably my #1 used tool in the shop, so I'm just, you know, doing what I can, all the different attachments and features on it to make it work and clean up all this stuff. I can't stand cutting something and it not being cleaned up, but it's cleaned up now, so all we got to do is bend it to shape. That was the way it was designed, for us to bend it up. The problem is we can't do all 3 bends. We can either do the top bend or the 2 side bends. So I decided to do the side bends because they're a little more likely to warp, and we're gonna have to get a little creative to get this last bend. It would just basically, the other pieces would run into the bender if we tried to do it all together. So clamping it to the table seems like it's going to work, but I realized I should put a bar down so that way it bends nice and square. It doesn't bend all awkward. A little bit of hammer massaging, and it's looking like it's working. We got it all together. We got it all bent. So that's another benefit, honestly, to using this thinner aluminum. You know, it's when you're working with different materials, aluminum, steel, different thicknesses, there's pros and cons to every type. And you know, the downside to this is we've got to make it really rigid for it to support what we need it to support because it's pretty thin. But the upside is it's easier to do that because it's a lot easier to move it, massage it, bend it, etc. So now we've just got to weld our inside corners. You know, before having the press brake and even the plasma cutter, this would have had to have been 4 pieces. I would have had to make 4 pieces for each one and then weld them all together, which is a lot more time consuming. It's not as nice. It's harder to get things square, and it's just not as aesthetically pleasing. So definitely a good example of tools that I knew I would use, but I didn't realize how much I would use them until they got kind of added into my routine and my wheelhouse of, all right, well, if I'm going to make this, I'll just design it flat, bend it, weld the corners. And that's what we did. So now we've just got to clean up our mess from the welding. I may have not realized that I left the machine on DC, and with headphones in, you don't hear the difference between DC and AC on your TIG welder, and it took me a minute to figure out why it was not welding well. I was like, man, I swear I welded this aluminum before and it didn't weld this bad. I don't know what's going on here. Took the headphones out and realized immediately. So after using just about every tool, including the countersink to deburr them, we've got them made. Now it's a matter of if it all fits. I mean, I know the box dimensions, but there are some aspects that I didn't account for, and I'm just kind of banking on it working out. So I didn't have to take as much time on the design phase, but we won't really know till we try it if it's going to work out and we got lucky or not. All right, moment of truth. Really, the only thing not super stable is the pegboard itself. It just has a little bit of flex to the whole thing, but otherwise, I mean, that works. Not too shabby. Pretty dang happy with that. We are gonna have to do, well, see, like this one can probably just, this port, figure out what to do on that front. But sweet, all right, control box is mounted. This will be nice too because we can nicely kind of cable manage the wires down the pegboard. You know, and this way they're up out of the way, so both tables can move around, do their thing. Yeah, I might just have to like do a foot spacer or something. But before we go too deep into this, before I put the plasma cutter setup fully away, I have another design, cut, bend project I want to do. Ironically for the bender, you know, it's like chicken or the egg. A project for the bender for using that we're gonna have to use the bender to make, but that will be for the bender. So we put these parking casters on, and very helpful because sometimes you need to bend something large. We got to pull this whole thing out, you know, into the open area. But the pedal's just kind of always, it's always sliding around. It's always in the way. So I want to build a mount like, you know, like something like that. You don't have to worry about it dragging around, getting caught on things. This is a project I've been thinking about since we got the ArcDroid set up, because that pedal, it's something I've wanted to do with it from the beginning. I only even got the pedal for that air over hydraulic ram because the little handle broke, but once I switched, I realized it was a great upgrade because sometimes you need to hold the piece with two hands and you don't have to use your other hand, which you don't have three hands, you know, some people, but to actuate it. And it gives you a lot of finite control. The only problem is it's always moving around, sliding away from you, all of that. So having a solid mount for it in general, where it can stay in one place and be attached, would be great. But then also to where it stays with the whole assembly as we move it around. If we need to work on it, do something, we don't have to deal with that. So got our design drawn up. Obviously had to add some octagons, some random hole cutouts for lightness, even though the weight does not matter even in the slightest on this scenario, and almost forgot to readjust all of my settings for steel, but we got it cut, and it's looking pretty good. It's like my own advent calendar. Is that what it's called? Is that what I'm thinking of? Since this was steel, I did put a bend relief. It's not that it's needed, but more so just to give me a designated spot to bend it at. However, I did bend it a little bit. It ended up being a little bit tighter. I should have given myself a little more space. I'm just hoping that it still works. It's going to be a little tight to fit the pedal, but it looks like it's going to fit. We only had to drill one hole in the frame because we were able to reuse this other hole. And I just got to do a little carbide burring, you know, of the slots in the pedal to make sure it bolts on nicely. But everything seems like it's working. It fits. It ships. So the final test is just to make sure it does as promised, as it was intended, and we can still move this thing around with it attached without it dragging the ground. Nice. Still rolls. All right. Beautiful. Sweet. I've been wanting to do that for a while, pretty much since setting up the plasma table. I was like, it'd be nice to make a little bracket for this. You can either unplug it there at the pedal or unplug it over here at the wall if I want to take the line with me. But either way, we're in business. Okay. Moving on. One more thing I want to knock out while I'm thinking about it so I don't forget. Got a consultant hardware store over here. Got some M6 washers. Yeah, I think that'll work. I definitely didn't love the idea of putting screws into my loft floor, but at the same time, I like that idea a lot more than someone leaning back in this chair and flipping off the loft. Because that someone could be me, let's be honest. Moving the loft. Even with me knowing that they wouldn't, if they weren't mounted, I could still see myself not paying attention and leaning back. It's just, it's one of those habits, hard to break, leaning back in any chair you sit in. Nice, that feels a lot better, knowing that you can't topple over. Yeah, these are great for up here, this is perfect. I mean, a little out of the conversation if someone's over there, but the lock's kind of a, but it works. We got seats, and they're out of our way. Win-win. Pretty cool. Especially knowing that they're mounted there so solidly. Like, I ain't going nowhere. All right, let's get back to work on this stuff. All right, I need to make sure that these will also reach. Oh yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, what about over here? Yep, all right, cool. Well, before we go, trying to do all this nice wiring, we need to mount these. The only problem is marking these front ones because this is in the way. It's going to be a little tricky, but I've got a plan. The easy way to do this would have been to put some wood screws in from the top, which would basically mark our holes, take them out, drill them, and then put bolts in. But again, we can't really get to the top of these, so we've got to get a little creative, do some measuring and marking. Now, marking holes used to be my kryptonite. I was so bad at it. It was guaranteed that one of my holes was not going to line up or more. And I'd spend so much time trying to modify things to make them fit because I messed up on the holes. And it's probably one of the biggest things I've improved on in my just making stuff life is getting holes in the right spot. So I got confidence, but it's still a little bit nerve-wracking. We can't really redo it without moving the pieces. Luckily, this top comes off, and basically the whole thing comes off, and we can flip it over and do our drilling from the back side. Now, I wanted to use this fresh side, but since I had marked and drilled the holes from the other side, then the pattern would be reversed. So we're gonna have to use the ugly beat-up side, but that's okay for now. It's gonna get more damage when we get metal shavings all over it and all of that. Now, basically, my plan is to run these screws up from the bottom side. I've pocketed it so they go up far enough. We need them to be pretty tall, and then hopefully we can just set the machines down on here, put nuts on from the top side, and not need to hold the back side. All right, this is gonna be the hard part. Okay, we got it though. They're just all the bolts are a little bit crooked because they're so long and the holes are really tight. I ain't going nowhere. Alright, now it's time for this one, which is also going to be tricky for the same reasons. Getting that right angle, Boom, solid. All right, well, they're both nice and solidly mounted. The plan worked. These things ain't going nowhere. One more thing before we wire it up. We gotta raise these up a little bit. Yeah, let me, I'm like looking at it, thinking through it. Let me decide what, I was thinking I could do I guess I could still do that, some flat bars, so that's probably what I'll do. But it means I gotta take them back off the shelf, which is gonna kind of suck, but that's okay. Yeah, that's okay, let's get to it. Since I didn't account for all of the port access, I thought the 2 octagons would be large enough. We've got to raise it up. That's the best way to get access to all the ports because where I need to cut really on both of them would cut the diagonal and basically eliminate it, which we need that because of how thin this aluminum is. So we're making these spacer blocks basically that are going to lift it up, and we should hopefully have access to all our ports. Now the thing is, these are mounted on rubber feet, and it needs that to be isolated from vibration, you know, like you normally would with electronics. So my goal here is to basically have the rubber feet sit down in these holes, but not all the way. So that way it's still got that rubber isolation. It can still move around, but it's spaced up and it's kind of captured. That way they can't just fall off. That is another thing I was kind of concerned about in deciding on a plan, because I couldn't fit the design with the front lip like I had intended to make sure they don't fall off. So we just had it open in the front. This should kind of two birds, one stone. Solve both of our problems. We've just got to get them tacked on and welded on in the exact right spot so that these fit nice and tight, but obviously not everything lines up. So with the control box, I marked them out. I would love to have just tacked them with the control box there, but obviously that's a no-go. You don't want to be tacking next to sensitive electronics. So we got them marked so we could tack them, and then we've just got to weld them out. Now I've been using this TIG torch that's I got specifically for welding stainless, titanium, stuff you weld at low amperage, trying to get in the car, you know, welding the chromoly cage and the RX-7, all that kind of stuff. A nice light, low amperage torch. The problem is I kind of lied to myself because I thought, it's easy enough to switch between that one and my water-cooled setup. You know, I'll just switch them back and forth depending on the project. But when you're in kind of a hurry doing just a quick project like this, you don't think about it. But these being aluminum, you weld at a pretty high amperage, and then them being kind of awkward to get to and awkward spots, things tend to get hot. You kind of end up welding longer than you would in a best case scenario. Now, I'm not making excuses here. I promise this isn't me making excuses for my welding. I'm just saying it's kind of hard to get to, so you spend a little more time on the welding than you would, so it gets hotter, and eventually the torch was about to burn my hand. I mean, it was burning my hand through the gloves, so we switched to the water-cooled setup, you know, just in time for the end of the project. Probably should have done this before we started, but we made the switch for the different project, just like I planned. I definitely need to get better about switching them ahead of time. It's just, you know, but regardless, finish welding these out. We can call this one done and dusted. All right, take something. You remember where we had this? It's gotta be right here. Yeah, that's where it was. Captures it too, so it can't fall off with all the rattles and vibrations. Alright, a little bit more of a struggle than anticipated, but it's in there. They're both on there. Now they can't fall out. They're still isolated with the rubber from vibration. Now we should be able to get to all of our things. Yeah, port, port, perfect. Yeah, so look, that's the port that was blocked before, and slightly the power input. And then on this one, it was this guy, the encoder input and the power input. Now they're all available. Sweet, all right. Machine's bolted. Control box is installed. Gotta say, that ain't going nowhere. None of it's going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. Yeah, we need to wire them up now and do some serious cable management. But at least everything's mounted now. We have point A, we have point B, we have point A, we have point B. So we can, let's see how nice and sleek we can get these wires. Oh man, finally coming together though. A little time consuming, but it's getting there. Oh, and we got our switch works too. It's a little tight on this side, but it works. I was honestly kind of looking forward to the cable managing side of this just because
there is a lot of cables, and when you get them tied up nicely and everything tucked, it's one of the more satisfying type of projects. I enjoy it. It's another thing I used to be bad about, leaving cables and cars, wires, whatever, just cram them under the carpet or just bundle them up. And I've since, gotten rid of that habit to the point of now I can't stand them being messy. So we've really got to take our time on this because it will bother me forever if it's messy. So there's these different boxes and stuff mainly for powering the lathe, emergency stop, and being able to control turning the motor on and off, all of those things. So these all kind of have to work together in unison and be tied together, and I wanted to mount them to the pegboard. That's another benefit to using this toolbox is not only do we have everything self-contained, we have storage for materials and tools and all of that stuff, but we also have the pegboard to mount stuff to. So instead of this stuff having to just get mounted flat or sit around or tucked in a corner, it's all mounted nicely to the wall, which will really help us with our cable management. But we're going to need some specialty items if we want to do this super nice, which, I'm trying to do it nice. That's the whole point, because I'll regret not doing it nice later, and I'll probably never come back to redo it nice, Oh, I knew that was going to happen. It's just not, let me put this in the drawer. Use the features. Gotta use the features, So anyway, basically got everything roughed out over here. As you can see, we got a lot of cables. I wanted to get an idea of, make sure we had everything and see what we were working with, as far as what we were gonna need to manage. And we're kind of one plug short of what we would need to do this cleanly. So I'm gonna have to get something and make something to do this the way I want to, because I want to keep this cable management really, really neat. So that way nothing's in the way, there's nothing to get caught in stuff. And also we want to minimize how much space we're taking up on this pegboard so we can continue to use it and add things on that we use with the two machines. I'm really, really, really happy this worked out. It was an idea that popped into my head and I did some measuring and it seemed like it would work, but you never know. And to see it all set up on here, them mounted, the boxes, the pegboard, I'm so stoked. I cannot wait to see them in operation. We still need a couple things to finalize, basically the tooling for this and for this as well as those boxes and parts and pieces to make our cable management all nice. Now we obviously still need to move it, and we got kind of two options. Either here, which I like this spot up against the wall, accessible but kind of out of the way. The only thing is it requires at least moving the compressor down about a foot, maybe a little more, which we do have room to do that. But rabbit hole, while we're there, it might be time to finally put the compressor outside. We could put it out back under the lean-to, and it would open up a good chunk of space in here. It's something I've resisted for a while because, in here it gets much drier air and it's out of the weather. It's a nice compressor. But on the flip side, it takes up space and it could go outside and it would make it quieter in here. So I don't know. I'm sure most people are going to be team put it outside. Y'all been telling me for a while, but let me know. What do you think? Should we just go ahead and move it outside and then put that there? But also we have this spot here and just at the moment it's taken up by stuff. So really I need to get a lot of this stuff installed so that I can get it out of the way. Those seats are actually going to be for a shop project, which I'm pretty excited about. It should be a fun little project to make. But all of that being said, we need a few more things to wrap all this up. Plenty more to come on that. It's a never-ending list. And I really enjoy these because I get to reap the rewards for so long. And, everything I do in here makes my life easier when it comes to building the cars, So it's nice to get these knocked out because then you get to enjoy this stuff. Oh, speaking of, that's the other thing. I was going to go ahead and move this. I had a plan for this area, but now I'm conflicted. I need some input. I can't decide. They're all good options, but the plan originally was to slide these all the way down to that post, open up a ton of space here, put low cabinets, build a rolling workbench over top of all of them, and then we could pull that out, have a huge workbench to work on long, and then roll it back or tie them all together and make that one big thing, and then build a wall structure so that we can mount pegboard panels like we have up there, and then have a full pegboard wall here. That was kind of my plan. I was all for it, but now I'm kind of conflicted. Would be really cool to have a matching box over here, but just need storage and workspace. I'm even considering relocating these all together and getting some deeper ones so we have more space and replacing them with that. We could do one more of these type of things if we did that. There's so many options. I don't know. There's too many options. I'm still debating how I want to go about it. So that's kind of my other hang up at the moment is I got to make a decision because it's going to bother me being in here with just an open hole over there if I move that. But I really don't want to use it until we get it set up in its spot. So, you know, we got to figure this out. Well, let me know. But anyway, I'm jibber jabbering. I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me. I had a good time. I'm excited to start this new chapter with new features. We're going to be using the features. So I can't wait to see you guys for that and for all the projects we got going on. But for now, we are out of time. Partially because I want to work on the jet boat. The prop came in and I'm itching, man. I need to get out in the water. I need it. Got some stuff, you know, I need it. Gotta do some jet boat stuff. Anyway, I'll see you guys for that too, hopefully. But for now, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Goodbye, guys. I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Is that out of order? I don't know. Goodbye.